In this week's episode, Sony makes a drastic move.
And with it being episode 64, we thought we would take a brief look back at Nintendo's 64-bit powerhouse. I'm Anthony.
And I'm Barry, and this is episode 64 of the Retro Gaming Dads podcast, the podcast for everything retro and retro-inspired.
When will Phil get the understanding of isometric games?
Never.
This has been a long-standing thing between us.
I'm relatively certain he understands them now. I've sent him enough links to Wikipedia, to the way things are drawn, for him to understand it. It's blatantly just to get on my nerves. And unfortunately, it works.
Well, yeah, because I was listening to a podcast and he said, it's another game, it's isometric. You're like, no, it's not. It's not. And then when one was isometric, he goes, yeah, I'm not going to say it just to annoy you. I'm like, flipping heck.
He's so petty.
He is, but so are you at times.
Before we get into the podcast proper, should we say a big thank you to our Patreon subscribers, Short Gizmo and
Bobby Socks.
As always, thank you very much, and your continuing support is really, really appreciated.
Yeah, no, honestly, it does mean a lot, and we really do appreciate it, as Barry said. So, do we get right into it?
Been up to anything in the last week that's retro gaming related?
Not sure about retro gaming. However, I've been playing a lot of arcade games when I went on holiday to Butlins last week.
Did I show you or tell you what I picked up when I was visiting my mum in Plymouth?
You told me you didn't show me, but also I think you heard on podcasts as well about some bits you picked up.
While I was down actually visiting family, spending quality time with them, I managed to find a retro gaming shop and pick myself up Sega Master System, the first model, not the second model, which was a lot more widely accessible. Second model was actually the very first console I bought from Boots, which actually blew your mind.
Oh yeah, that was when it came with Sonic, and you're like, what's that? And then that was your obsession.
Yep, and I managed to pick up a Super Nintendo Mini as well.
We'll have to play it the next time around.
Which, thankfully, when I started playing it, it'd already been hacked and got loads of extra games on it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, thanks Cash Converter for not formatting it properly.
Yeah, I highly doubt Cash Converter even knows how to format it, if I'm honest.
I'm not complaining. Saves me a job. That's my retro bits for now. Apart from that, I'm still waiting on my Wonder Boy. God knows when that'll get delivered.
Do you know what? Talk about Wonder Boy, and thankfully this ties in very well with our first bit of news, because despite you waiting for Wonder Boy, there's actually another Wonder Boy collection coming to Limited Run Games.
Yeah, so this one is Wonder Boy the Dragon's Trap. Oddly enough, actually, one of my favourite Master System games.
Well, fantastic. However, unfortunately, this is only on the PS5 or the PC.
Yes. It's already available at the moment. This is the one, do you remember when I was showing you? And I said, honestly, it's one of the most beautiful 2D side-scrolling games I've ever seen. Yes. And you can switch between like the really old chunky graphics.
Didn't I play this one around your house?
You've had at least a small go on it, yes.
Yeah, I didn't play because I remember running around as the dragon.
Yeah, there's a dragon,
Alligator?
a lion.
It is a dragon.
So
I was looking at it, I'm like, is it a dragon? Because it's just this green, looks like a dinosaur or an alligator sort of thing that runs around 2 feet.
It's most definitely a dragon.
All right. Yeah, no, I do remember playing this, and I did enjoy it, and it's one thing that I wouldn't mind actually picking up myself.
Well, now, thanks to Limited Run Games, it's actually getting a physical edition on PlayStation 5, and oddly enough, PC.
Yeah, it's a bit of a bizarre one.
A physical version on a PC, and I was like, obviously it's got to be just a code in a box and you get some gubbins with it. No, it's actually a physical game. I'm not 100% sure, but I think you get a disc with the game on, plus a pen drive.
No. Oh, I thought it was just a pen drive.
Well, I don't know. It doesn't really explain it very well. So it might just be the pen drive, but there is definitely a disc case for the game as well. So unless the pen drive fits in the disc case somehow.
Maybe it's both, because it says here, physical copy of Wonder Boy the Dragon's Trap for PC, and then Wonder Boy the Dragon's Trap USB with game included.
Yeah, so I'm a bit confused, but the fact that you get some sort of physical media, I just hope it's DRM free, just for the sake of it working in the future.
Think that's pretty cool. Yeah, a physical game for a PC is very rarely bought and used, I feel.
Yeah, I can't even remember what the last physical game I bought. Even the physical games I did buy, like Dawn of War 2,
Yeah.
it installed and then downloaded the game from Steam anyway.
Oh, yeah, you're right. No, I can't remember buying a physical game for the PC. Steam has been around for so long. Physical games for PCs? What's that?
I've got physical games, but they're all like very early 2000s or 90s.
But I'm fairly certain you're pretty sad it's not coming to the Xbox, though. Wonder Boy, the Dragon's Trap.
I could have lived with it being on Switch, because the collector's edition to this looks really nice. It actually comes in an oversized Master System clamshell case.
No, I think that's cool. I do like the post as well.
The artwork on this game is fantastic.
And then the soundtrack actually comes in a CD case, which I quite like.
Yeah, but who has CD players nowadays?
Exactly. I
suppose you can play them in your Xbox Series X, in your PlayStation 5 disc
in your
edition.
car.
I don't even know if many people have them in the car nowadays.
Believe it or not, most cars do still have CD players. One
thing I am gutted doesn't come with this collector's edition, though, is an art book. This is the kind of game. The artwork in the games, as I keep saying, is amazing.
Oh, yeah.
It's a game that screams out, give me an art book. You know, some concept drawings, some larger detailed illustrations. It would have been fantastic, but no, what? I don't know. It just seems a really obvious thing to have included.
No, I do like the art style they've gone with. And I do remember, it was on the Xbox around Jaws I was playing it. I do play it, and I did enjoy it. And it's like quite a bit of a quirky art style.
They're very animated.
It fits in really well with the game. It suits it.
Yeah, well, the thing is, the underlying game doesn't change when you switch between the two art styles. However, the extra animation makes the game feel different, and it makes it feel fresh. When you play it on the old graphics, it feels very slidey, and, well, it feels how it did on the original Master System.
Now, the question is, will you get your Wonder Boy game before this gets released?
Oh, yeah, this will probably take, like, I don't know, 9 months to actually get sent out from past experience.
I know. How long have you been waiting for yours?
This is only going up for pre-order at the moment.
Yes.
So anyone who's interested can get the standard version of the PlayStation 5 for $34.99, or the collector's edition for either PlayStation 5 or PC for $64.99.
And bizarrely enough, it actually starts today for the pre-orders, and they close on the 2nd of October. So you've got a bit of time, but as of now, you can pre-order it.
Speaking of games, shall we go on to a bit of a bittersweet month for Games with Gold?
So, Games with Gold, as we know, has been knocking about for quite a long time since Xbox 360. Now, if I'm honest, it was a matter of time until they did this. So, the Xbox 360 titles no longer going to be part of Games with Gold.
Yeah, it's actually been 9 years since they started including them.
Well, I'm definitely grabbing one of those games of the final ones, and that'll be Portal 2.
Yeah. Well, that's actually the only Xbox 360 game that's available for September, and it'll be the final one.
Have you played Portal 2?
Kind of. I've played like a little bit. I've completed Portal. I've never played multiplayer in Portal 2.
We will play through Portal 2 and get it completed. It is a fantastic game. You have to play it.
No, I'm not saying it's a bad game.
Games.
I've just never played it. I really enjoyed Portal.
Yeah. Portal 2 did it justice. It didn't, quite often with a second game coming out, but then also adding multiplayer to it, and split screen sometimes kind of doesn't do justice. It doesn't really at all.
I believe they've done it in the right way, where it's not just the single player game, but with 2 players. It's tailored for 2 players specifically. Yes. Do you think this is a good game for it to go out on?
I do. I think it's a fantastic game. If I was to have my choice and it said to me, what 360 title would you want on? Chromehounds. But that's never going to happen.
Well, 1, it's not backwards compatible.
Yeah.
And 2, they shut the servers down.
Hence why I said that would never happen. But if I had my pick, that would be that. But Portal 2, I think, is a really good game to go out on. If I'm honest, the only sort of other game that might draw a lot of people to play it would possibly be Team Fortress 2.
Yeah, I suppose they could have given us the orange box.
Yeah, the whole orange box collection came with Team Fortress 2, Portal 2, and Half-Life 2.
I think that was actually where I played Portal originally. No, that I think back.
Oh, was it the original Portal? Oh, it must be it must be the original Portal, Half-Life 2, Team Fortress 2. That would have been a good collection, but no, Portal 2, I think, is quite a good exit for the 360 Games of Gold. It's sad, but at least we're getting a decent game to go on, and it was inevitable.
Microsoft has said this is for technical reasons that they're not continuing it, but also they've realistically ran out of good selection of games for Xbox 360. So it's ran its course. Now, they were quick to stress, though, that this isn't the beginning of the end for games with gold.
Yeah.
So this will continue. You will be able to download any previously claimed Xbox 360 titles still. They'll still show in your downloads queue, and you'll still be able to play them online as well.
So are they still doing original Xbox games then as well, or?
Yeah, so from my understanding is we'll still get Xbox One titles, but we may get some original Xbox titles. It's only Xbox 360 titles that they specifically said would not be included.
So what are the technical reasons why they can't keep doing 360 titles is my question then. If they can still do the original ones, why are they stopping 360?
I think it's because they're just running out of games. Don't forget, they've been doing this now for 9 years. So say if you get on average, say maybe 20 a year. So that's what, 180 titles?
I don't know. Yeah, fair enough.
In all fairness, though, I think on one hand, Microsoft want to push people away from Xbox Live Gold to Game Pass.
Yeah.
And I think Games with Gold is lost its relevance. I remember every month it was like, oh, what are the new games with Gold for this month? Now I barely ever look. I barely ever claim.
I've not been excited for a while. They've not really done it justice.
I wouldn't be able to tell you what August's Games with Gold titles are. I haven't got a clue.
Oh, no chance. I've not even looked. There's been a few that I've picked up and played at times, don't get me wrong, and I've tried them. And I will look from time to time, but I've definitely not been excited for any for a while. Especially when you've got Game Pass. Just to play through games on Game Pass. Alive, we have 200 games to play. Do I really need to focus on?
Exactly. It's a bit sad, but it was inevitable. And Games for Gold, it's still continuing. It's just not going to have any new Xbox 360 titles included. But anyone who does want to grab Portal 2 can do between the 16th and the 30th of September.
Oh, I definitely suggest to grab it if you haven't played it or don't have it.
And don't forget Xbox 360 titles as well. Once you claim them, they're on your account forever. Even if you stop paying for Xbox Live Gold or Game Pass, the 360 titles are still yours. That sounds like a good deal. And actually, while we're talking about good deals...
It's not a good deal. It's kind of Sony's... Yeah. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. I'm pretty certain anyone listening to this podcast would have seen that Sony have decided to increase the price of the PlayStation 5 in a lot of places.
Essentially everywhere except America.
Yeah.
Except the US.
And it's not just by a small amount either at times.
No, some of these are...
Why do some whack?
Is this a case of Sony has become the scalper? That's what it feels like at this point. A lot of our listeners are in the UK, and Sony have announced that the PlayStation 5, both the digital and the Blu-ray edition, will be increasing by £30. Now, that's about an 8% increase.
Yeah.
And with the fact that everything else is going up on such a luxury product, do you think this is going to turn gamers away? On its own, £30 doesn't sound like a massive amount. Not when you're paying £450 for the PlayStation 5.
Do you want me to be honest?
Yeah.
With the way that scalpers did to people, where they were spending £500, maybe more, I think people would still buy these, even at the price increase.
Well, let's face it, it's still probably going to be cheaper than CEX, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. I think anything will be cheaper than CEX.
I just think it's very tone deaf to be increasing the price of the console. I do think this is going to turn a lot of people away, and we'll come onto it later on, but a lot of Japanese gamers are kind of asking the question, do we really need PlayStation?
Exactly. And if Japanese are questioning it, then Sony going to get screwed. If
the home of Sony.
Yeah. Where its biggest market is questioning whether they need PlayStation.
In all fairness, I'd argue its biggest marketplace is probably the US, which is maybe why they haven't increased the price there.
That's what I was just about to say. So what Sony have decided to do is increase the prices. So they've decided to do it in Europe by €50, UK £30, like we said, Japan by 10,000 yen. Now that's like 20% increase, isn't it?
Yeah, depending on the model. So you're going from 40,000 yen roughly for the digital version to 50,000 yen. So that's a 25% increase in the cost of a PlayStation console.
That's massive. Quarter extra. I think that's
for a console that has been out for 2 years near enough.
Yeah. Just going through the rest of them. China by 400 Chinese yuan. Australia by 50 Australian dollars. Mexico by 1,000 pesos. And Canada by 20 Canadian dollars. So it's quite a bit of a mixture, the price increase across the board. I'm not sure it's a good idea to be increasing the prices this far down the line.
Not almost 2 years after it's been released. And it's not as if Sony didn't make a profit on the PlayStation. The last quarter, they made just shy of $400 million in profit.
That's the thing, it's not enough.
Well, yeah. This is what it feels like, that they are getting greedy. And it feels kind of similar to what happened with the PlayStation 3, where Sony came off the back of PlayStation 2, the best-selling console of all time, absolutely destroyed the competition. And then it felt like they just got greedy, and they were like, oh yeah, our next console is $600. You'll pay it because it's the PlayStation 3. And it came back to bite them in the arse.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people have said that they reckon this will kill the console for a while.
I don't think it'll kill it. There's people who would just go buy it regardless. The mates have got a PlayStation 5, so they have to get a PlayStation 5 to either play with them or keep up with them, kind of thing. I do think it'll stall it, though.
I just feel like Japan's completely getting spanked.
Yeah, I was looking on Twitter at a lot of the responses by Japanese gamers, and I had to use Twitter's built-in translation feature, and I got the gist of what most of them were saying, which was, they work hard for the money. It's ridiculous such a large price increase, especially during a recession.
Well, yeah, the global market's just getting absolutely hammered for gas, electricity, and that.
And on top of that, they're starting to question, do we really need PlayStation? A lot of these titles are coming to PC anyway.
Yeah.
You can get a pretty decent PC for, like, say, £500. And you've got the option that you can improve that over time. You can upgrade it. It's a lot more versatile than a PlayStation console. And on top of that, a lot of them are going with the Switch. Something portable, lower powered.
Yes. Well, not only that though. With the PC, you've got a lot of PlayStation games coming to it. But then on top of that, you've got the full Steam library. You could easily get access to the full Microsoft library. The benefits are there. So this may force more Japanese people to go for a PC instead.
Yeah, potentially. I would like to say maybe Microsoft could capitalize on this and maybe push the Xbox a little bit harder in Japan.
Yes.
£250 for a Series S is a bargain, and you can actually get them in stock in most places.
Well, not only that, I quite like how both Nintendo and Microsoft have responded back to this and said, we will not be increasing our prices.
No.
Like, straight away, they're both like, yeah, we won't be doing that.
No, Microsoft, I think, have got very deep pockets to take the hit anyway. And Nintendo aren't really known for making consoles and then selling them at a loss anyway, so I'm sure they're making a profit on each system sold.
Yeah.
However, the kick in the teeth gets even worse.
Go on.
There's a new revision of the PlayStation 5 that's been spotted in Australia and I think in Japan as well.
Really?
And do you remember last year we were talking about there was a revision where the system was lighter, and we were like, well, why is it lighter? And when they opened it up, they just took all of the copper out the heatsink.
Yeah.
Well, the new model, although I've not seen inside of it yet, has been released, and it's 300 grams lighter than that revision, which was 300 grams lighter than the original system.
Have they completely removed the heatsink now and gone?
That's what I'm thinking at the moment.
Panic.
The new system, it comes with like a little hose, and as you're playing, you've got to go to try and cool down the processor yourself.
Or they sell you the PlayStation 5 and the cooling system separately.
Yeah, maybe. We'll sell you the PlayStation 5 for £30 extra, but if you want to cool the thing so it doesn't melt in about an hour, you've also got to buy the fan, which, 100 quid extra. But you also have to pay a subscription for the fan to keep working as well.
Actually, that PlayStation subscription hasn't been that well received as far as I can tell.
No, it seems to have stalled.
Yeah.
Everyone was a bit underwhelmed with what initially launched with it.
Completely underwhelmed.
And then,
I think the games,
that was
some of the games weren't running well either.
Not for us, because they were running at 50 hertz, but for the rest of the world, they were running really slow.
Sony's not having a great time at the minute, are they?
They're not. They're raising the price and what appears to be cost-cutting measures in a revised version of the system.
Sony. When will you learn that if you mess up too much, you're no longer gonna be the gaming giants?
We try and be positive about Sony, but you just make it so difficult.
Well, that's the thing. Because when we get positive news, we really go on it, don't we? We're like, oh, this has happened. They're not closing the stores down. They're doing this.
And then they just say that was positive. Oh, they're not just closing down the stores. What a positive. No, they're not. They're not going to do the shitty thing that they said they were going to do. Well, yeah. I don't really think they deserve applause for that, to be honest.
No, but we kind of tried to big it up a bit. But they just... Honestly, we're really sorry for bashing Sony so much, but they really don't help themselves, and that's the biggest issue that they have. It's just one thing after another.
Well, I think we've come to the end of the news.
Yes, I think so.
Since this is episode 64, we were going to do an N64 episode, but realistically, I didn't have an N64 during that generation. I was a Sega Saturn kid, and I'm not even sure. Was you born then? Maybe not. I'm not sure.
Stuff you. I was born. I was at least in my teenage years when that was out, and I do remember playing quite a few games on that.
I'm fairly certain you weren't. When was you born? 91?
90.
So when this came out, you were like 7.
I remember being a teenager playing it, so it must have been quite a few years then.
Well, before we get on to that,
as always, if you would like to support the podcast, you can do so for free by leaving a review on your favourite podcasting app. This helps us reach more listeners and to help improve future episodes.
Alternatively, if you're able, you can visit our Patreon and become a member for as little as £1 per month, where you'll occasionally receive early, but always ad-free versions of the podcast. We'll even give you a shout-out in the next episode.
Yeah, we do try, but we're sorry. Sometimes it just doesn't happen.
Yes. Especially with children.
Oh, yeah, children.
I'm trying to edit the podcast and go, Dad.
Oh. Yeah, they're going, shh, be quiet. I'm trying to do this.
Yeah.
I can't hear.
Moving on to the N64. So, this was a very hyped console. I remember watching a TV show called Bad Influence, which I think we have mentioned before on the podcast. And they had this console from Japan called the Ultra 64. It was supposed to be running on silicon graphics, workstations, sort of power, the same systems that done animations for Toy Story and whatnot. And I think they bigged it up a teeny weeny little bit.
You think?
Just a bit. But I do remember seeing Mario 64.
Mario 64 was a fantastic game on the N64.
Oh, at the time, it was phenomenal.
It was.
It looked amazing.
I remember doing the Battle of the Arenas the most on that game.
Which one? The boss fights where you got to sling them off the edge?
No, bizarrely enough, I used to just had the balloons in your carts and you just had to sort of hit people and knock the balloons off.
No, Mario 64, not Mario Kart 64.
Sorry, no. Yeah, that too. Sorry, I forgot. Mario Kart 64 and Mario 64. Mario 64 was fantastic. Yeah. I did really enjoy the game, and it was quite a bit of a... I know, it was a big jump up from Mario on the SNES.
SNES?
So it was quite a bit of a jump, and the graphics really, really changed.
The generational leap between the SNES and the N64, we'll never see anything that vast.
No, Caesar, everything now just looks the same. Like, oh,
no, it's a bit more detailed, a bit higher resolution, but essentially, they just look like better Xbox One games, which look better Xbox 360. Yeah. There was a decent jump between the original Xbox and the 360.
Oh, there was definitely, but I don't think we'll ever have the jump that we had between the SNES and the N64.
Unless the PlayStation 6 and the Xbox, whatever they call it, is holographic room projections and all sorts, we'll never see any sort of generational leap like that.
No chance.
The game itself was based around the controller as well. Yeah. As much as I know Phil hates it, and I'm guessing you're not a fan.
No. In all fairness,
I don't mind it. I don't mind it.
I didn't hate it, but just what was with the single joystick in the center? I mean, it'd be good for like a flight game, something like that. Yeah, great. But what's the point of having one single joystick? Because you kind of like hold it in the middle and hold to the side if you want to use a joystick.
So you always put your right hand on the furthest most grip, where your action buttons, and those yellow buttons are actually called C buttons for cameras.
Yeah.
So you'd use that to control your camera. A and B is your action button. You've got the right trigger, and on the bottom, underneath the analog stick, you've got the Z trigger.
Yeah.
That's all you needed. So you would often only use the D-pad if maybe the game specifically requested it, maybe like a 2D game or maybe for menus.
But why not make it so you could move around the D-pad and then use the thumbstick to aim and then Z to shoot?
It wasn't required for games at that time. Don't forget, we weren't in the period of dual analog first-person shooters. In fact, at the time, its main competitors, the Sega Saturn and original PlayStation, didn't even have a single analog stick on them.
No. It was so weird when they released analog sticks on the PlayStation, though, not gonna lie.
I remember the Sega Saturn got an analog controller, specifically Nights into Dreams, and that has a single analog stick in it. However, the way it's designed is arguably a little bit better, where you've got your analog stick on the far left with the D-pad below it, a bit more like a traditional controller now, just no second analog stick. When the PlayStation came out and it had two analog sticks on it, this is the pre-DualShock version, everyone was like, what on earth is Sony smoking? We thought the N64 controller was crazy. Look at this thing. It's got two analog sticks on it.
Yeah, but the placement, though, however, my days.
I'm not a fan of the placement, but at the time, you're like, what do you need two analog sticks for? This is insane. And now it's the standard.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to go back to a single ever.
A holdover from this as well is if you look on your Switch, you haven't got L1 and R1 and L2 and R2. It's L and R and ZL and ZR.
I know, and it always confuses me. I'm like, why can't it just be L and R and then L here and R?
I get that. It's like, press CL. I'm like, oh, crap, which one was that?
I'm there going, is that the bumper? Wait, no, that's not the bumper. That's the one below it. And then I'm like, still, because it's ZL, I'm like, pressing the right one. I'm like, hang on a second, wrong side. It really throws me off.
Because to me, L and R would be the rear two bottom triggers. And I would assume the bumper buttons are L1 or 1 if you're on PlayStation. That would be ZL and ZR. But it's not. It's reverse from what I think makes sense.
So when it says ZR and ZL, I go for the bumpers. And I'm like, hang on, no. And I end up mashing all four triggers at the same time, trying to get one going.
But there was loads of great games on the N64. And I think for the time that they came out, they worked well with the N64 controller.
They did. Okay, I'll give you that, and I do agree with that. However, quick question. How many games do you reckon was on the N64? Give me a rough guess.
I actually have an idea of the answer because you did ask me this earlier on.
But what would you originally thought?
I thought there wasn't that many. So I guess 650.
Yeah, I had a quick look because I was having a quick gander through the other day, and 388.
I did expect it to be higher than that.
I did as well.
Refusing to move on from cartridges is probably what hurt the N64 the most, and possibly give the advantage to Sony with the PlayStation.
Yes.
Bear in mind, up until this point as well, the beginning of its generation, Square Enix pretty much made their games exclusively for Nintendo. You had loads of titles on the Game Boy, continuation of Final Fantasy series and things like Chrono Trigger on the SNES. And then it came to the N64, and they did even show a demo for 3D Final Fantasy VI, if I remember right, which looked amazing for the time. And then they were like, nah, we're going to Sony. And arguably one of the most influential RPGs, Final Fantasy VII, became a Sony title.
Well, that's the thing. If I think of Final Fantasy, I think Sony. I've never really thought anywhere else. I've always thought Sony.
Up until mid-90s, you would think Nintendo.
Not many people haven't heard of Final Fantasy. And to lose that must have been hard. Going on talk about cartridges and Nintendo, do you think they've been wise sticking to a cartridge at all?
Ultimately, no, I don't think so. Now, in Japan, there was actually an attachment called the 64D dig, which was kind of like super chunky floppy disks. That's the closest thing I can think of.
Okay.
However, that done really poorly. Now, they were supposed to be a higher capacity, lower cost alternative to cartridges.
I don't see the point of a cartridge. I don't like it. I'd rather it be a disc myself.
Nowadays, it's not too bad. The Switch, you can get a 32 gigabyte cartridge, which is approaching sort of the capacity of a Blu-ray disc.
Yeah.
But there's one game in particular, actually, I'm thinking of that I am really surprised made it to the N64, was Resident Evil 2.
Okay.
Now, this game came on 2 CDs for the PlayStation. So that was as much as 1.4 gigabytes.
With a lot of 4 cartridges there for the N64.
No, they fit this on a single 64 megabyte cartridge.
That mustn't have played well, surely.
No, it plays just as well. However, the audio is really compressed. The video is really compressed. A lot of the backgrounds, are compressed. They've just compressed everything.
Just like a bit of a blur.
And it's not bad. It's not bad. However, especially in the FMVs and the audio, it does lose a bit compared to the PlayStation version. It's a miracle the game's on there, but it was the difficulty porting that title across. If they'd stuck with CDs, I reckon you would have saw a lot more conversions coming across from the PlayStation. I even think, again, going back to Square, that they would have probably stuck with Nintendo rather than jumping ship to.
Looking at the N64, I can kind of see that having a disc drive on it, if I'm honest. I can kind of see it fitting in quite well with it. I don't think it'll be out of place on the N64. So it's a bit of a shame they didn't have one on there.
Yeah.
I actually have always quite liked the N64 design, if I'm going to be completely honest.
It looks too much like a toaster for me. I don't hate the design, don't get me wrong. I do not hate the design. And I love the transparent colours one. I really want a transparent orange N64.
No.
So much.
No. I want one of the blue Pokemon ones, Pikachu.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of variants of that depending on which region you get the N64 from. The cool little consoles, because when you power it up, Pikachu's cheeks glow as well to let you know there's power going to the console.
I saw one of them CX, like 400 quid.
No. I think I've got 2 N64s in the loft. One of them was the one I got off Phil for swapping it for Sonic Adventure.
I feel you got the better end of that deal.
I don't know.
Actually, no, you regret that. I remember hearing the podcast, listening to the last episode, and you regretted it.
Yeah, it's 50 quid to buy that game now, and I think I'd rather have that than an N64. I haven't got many games. Obviously, I've got the game everyone needed to have, GoldenEye.
If you think of an N64, 007, GoldenEye is the one that stands out the most.
I loved playing that in multiplayer. It was so funny, unless someone went up job. Because it was such a nightmare. Because of only one analog stick, it was move or aim, but not both.
Yeah.
Or not very easily, at least. So, it was just a nightmare trying to hit odd job. On top of that, it was just so fun hiding in vents, proximity mining everywhere, and just waiting for the whole stage to start exploding. However, I don't think I'd go back and ever play it again.
Oh, really? Because you think it might ruin the experience? Because
even back at the time, I knew it ran poorly. If there was a couple explosions going, the frame rate goes from frames per second to seconds per frame. And the controls nowadays, it's got to be a hard pill to swallow.
No, I can see that. I understand. I think there's some games that you can still play on there that will still sit well. For me, I quite remember playing Hydro Thunder on there. That's still a fantastic game, and I've got it on the Xbox One.
I enjoyed Wave Race 64 as well. I actually saw that first in a Comet or a Dixon's, I can't remember which. And they had one of, the little pod set up that you could demo some games on. And I was like, oh, wow, this water looks super realistic. It doesn't. But at the time, it looked really realistic, and it affected how your little jet ski was bobbing up and down on the water, and as you take turns. Yeah, and it was really good. Seeing that and seeing Mario 64, I was like, obviously compared to my Mega Drive, this is not even within the same league as it. It's just a million miles ahead.
It's new territory. Let's get into it now.
Yeah, because I'd played a few 3D games on the Mega Drive, but again, they ran really poor frame rates. Were flat shaded. There wasn't a lot of detail in them.
My biggest issues with games back then was, like you said, there was only one analog stick, so you could move around with the analog stick, and then to aim was you're pressing the buttons, or you had to stand still and just sort of drop down. That's my biggest gripe with these older consoles. I think that's why I never really got along with them.
I was going to say, don't forget that wasn't something exclusive to the N64. The Saturn and the PlayStation were the same.
Oh, no, I know. I remember playing on, I think it was the original PlayStation. I was trying to play Resident Evil, and that's where I really first had my proper experience with it. Because as I'm going to say, as Phil mentioned about Spyro in the last episode, I'm going to bring up stuff like Spyro and Crash Bandicoot, which is what I played in the original PlayStation. So when I then came across Resident Evil and stuff like that, where you had to stand still so you could then aim down, it really caused me a bit of like, what the heck, why can't I move? And then they're coming towards you, you're panicking, you're like, oh crap.
See, Resident Evil needed that sort of control. Whereas in, say, Mario 64, Spyro, Crash Bandicoot, if you push up, you'll run away from the camera. If you pull down, you'll run towards the camera. Resident Evil couldn't do that because it was fixed camera angles. Imagine that you're running up a corridor and then the camera switches to face you, and then suddenly you've just turned back on yourself and you're running back.
Yeah, I get it. I get why I did it, but with me at my young age, didn't agree with me. However, things like Mario Kart 64, I could play fine without an issue. I love that game on the N64.
See, again, though, playing a game like Mario Kart 64 with an analog stick compared to, I don't know, I know it's not a kart racer, but say Gran Turismo, where you're using D-pad, you had so much better control on Mario Kart.
Oh, yeah. I think because you kind of held the thumbstick forwards and then you could sort of roll it as you go in, so it was a lot more smooth. And that's the thing, a lot of people nowadays do some racing games, they still use the D-pad and we're going, you're a monster. How?
Do you know what? I do that. I'm rather than use the analog stick where you can kind of push it halfway, to get a little bit of steer, but not too much.
Yeah.
You'll just hear me and I'll be like this, trying to do a gradual turn, and I'll be mashing like that just to keep edging it left rather than being able to hold it as a smooth curve.
Monster. Why? Why do that to yourself?
Because I don't know, muscle memory. I have no idea.
Don't get me wrong, the N64 was a fantastic console, and it did have some great games on there. again, another one from was Pokemon Stadium 2. Absolutely love playing Pokemon on the N64 on a TV screen. But it's just the controller for me. I just didn't like it.
With Pokemon Stadium, I was traveling to Australia and there was an airport. I've got a feeling it might have been in Bahrain. And they had this set up and you could go along, chuck your Game Boy cartridge in, and you could play on the bigger screen.
All right.
This is the same place where I was telling you in the airport, and random people would just come up to you and see that you were playing Pokemon, and they'd just be like, might not even speak the same language, but they were asking, what do you want to trade and stuff like that. To see my Charizard up on that screen, that huge, mind-blowing 16-inch CRT.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd only ever seen it in monochrome on this little tiny Game Boy. And then suddenly it's in full 3D. And it was fantastic. Perfect Dark. So that's another great game. That was going to have so much extra tech built into it. Do you know one of the features that they planned for that game would allow you to actually put in the Game Boy transfer pack from Pokemon Stadium? Then, instead of putting Pokemon in it, put the Game Boy camera into it and take a picture of your own face and map it onto the character in multiplayer.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was one of the features that they actually was looking to implement, but I don't know whether it was for technical reasons or one of the other reasons I've heard is they didn't want people putting in the Prime Minister's face or putting in a celebrity's face and then running around and shooting them in the head.
An inappropriate picture.
Yeah, well, yeah. It was a more naive time back then. It was a console that had a lot of promise, but
yeah,
ultimately, I don't think it ever, outside of a few outliers, I don't think it ever hit its potential.
Well, like you said, the hype that they brought just before the release was well overshot.
Oh, yeah. I remember the adverts at the end of them. They were always like, Nintendo 64, the world's most powerful game console.
Action. Racing. Fun. Adventure. Nintendo 64, the fastest, most powerful games console on Earth, now at $99.99.
Outside of first-party Nintendo games, they just looked a smeary mess.
Yeah.
PlayStation, for all its faults, it's got jittery polygons, but it looked sharp. The Saturn existed. I love the Saturn, but it's 3D were
negligible,
just about adequate.
I can tell you're being very polite there.
The N64 though could do some fantastic 3D games. Conker's Bad Fur Day. I've genuinely forgotten what the Xbox version of the game looked like, which also looked absolutely phenomenal. And seeing pictures of the N64 one and gone, oh yeah, that's the Xbox one. Just because it looks so good. There was other games like that, but they were the small minority.
Do you reckon they would ever release a mini console of the N64?
If you asked me a few years ago, I would have said, oh yeah, of course they will. Now, I don't think so. Because from Nintendo's point of view, they can develop a new mini console, package it, produce it. Or they can just say, go get a Switch and sign up for Nintendo Online expansion
I was about to say, now they're put on to Nintendo Online with a subscription service and you can buy a controller as well to link up to it.
Yeah.
Maybe not. They'll just stick with that and just be like, it's all on there. Because I guarantee at some point, the GameCube is going to end up on there as well.
Almost certain.
I would really like to play.
I reckon maybe a Switch 2. Maybe a Switch 2, though.
Yes. I've never played all the Zelda games. I've played a few of them, not many. I've now completed Breath of the Wild a few weeks ago, as I said to you. And we played the one that was on the Switch as well, on the Nintendo Online. I would like to play some more. So,
yeah.
Ocarina of Time, I did play a bit in the N64. Didn't complete it, so I would like to complete that.
That's another groundbreaking game.
I know.
one that introduced the ability to lock onto your foe. I don't know if it was the first game
Wasn't
to
it?
do,
Wasn't it with the Z button as well? Wasn't it the Z button locked on?
Yeah, so you use the Z trigger to lock onto them, but then you could strafe around them. And again, at the time, it was like, why has anyone else thought of this? This makes perfect sense for when you're in combat, lock onto the enemy, rather than just run round and potentially disorient yourself.
Look.
Yeah. And then they've moved, so then you've got to do it again. One thing I really do miss from the N64, though.
Go on.
When they just chucked 64 at the end of every single title. Mario 64, Superman 64, Wave Race 64, Mega Man 64, Kirby 64.
Something tells me they wanted to emphasize on the 64.
They really did, but for continuity reasons, that really messed me up. Well, was Super Mario 1 through 63 gone? And then everyone was like, oh yeah, well, blatantly on the GameCube, the sequels are going to be called Mario 1 to 8. And you're like, no, this is getting a bit out of hand, these numbers.
Mario Cubed and Super Mario Cubed and Mario Kart Cubed. And
it doesn't have the same ring to it, though, does it?
No, it doesn't at all.
I must admit, though, it was funny just seeing it almost 2/3 of the library, it seemed, have 64 in the title somewhere.
Do you know what? Now you're saying 64. Shit, it was coming through my head right now as well.
Commodore 64?
Oh, no. It's absolutely stupid, and you're going to be going, Anthony...
Well, it's in your head, of course. It's going to be absolutely stupid. Come on.
There's a TV show called 64 Zoo Lane, a kids' TV program. That my sister was when she was younger.
Never
and
even
all that's going through my head is the 64 Zoo Lane.
No, I have never heard of it.
Later on, search the go onto YouTube, search 64 Zoo Lane intro, and you'll be like, "What?"
I think the console was overall good. One of my favorite games for multiplayer outside of GoldenEye, though, was Lilac Wars.
I haven't played that one.
Or Star Fox 64 for pretty much everywhere else in the world.
Star Fox 64 rings a bell.
It's a game that's had so many different titles. I think it was Star Fox for the original one and Star Wing over here. So rather than call the next game Star Wing 64, they called, Lilac Wars. It was like, oh, right,
kind
okay.
of like not linking at all. And visual.
Love that. So it's got a deathmatch mode. So you're flying around in the R Wings and shooting each other and dogfighting. You can unlock a tank and you think, do you know what? Forget this. I'm just going to tank and just rolling over and over to dodge fire. Everyone's there trying to like swoop down and shoot you and you just go, rip.
What, your whole tank over?
Yeah, just rolls like horizontally. So you're driving along and someone comes at you, you go, wait.
You flip one way.
Do a barrel roll.
Right, do you know what? Next time we come
breaking.
round, we'll have to have some free player games on Lilac Wars.
Yeah. Going on. Yeah,
first game, as far as I'm aware, that supported Rumble as well on the N64.
I thought Mario Kart had Rumble.
I can't remember if it had Rumble in, but I seem to remember them pushing the Rumble pack very heavily with Lilac Wars. Like the box I've got for the game, like a normal N64 box is, well, normal sized, and then this is like an oversized box so that they could put the Rumble pack in with it as well.
Okay.
If we do play it, though, I've only got one Rumble pack, so dibs.
Fine, yeah. Oh, it's yours anyway. I wasn't going to take it. I'm not like that.
I'm pretty certain I've got to chuck like 2 or 3 AAA batteries or something in it as well.
Oh, yeah, you'd never have batteries anyway.
No.
You'll be sitting Nick about Elliot's TV remote being like, I'll put my later.
Yeah.
I want a Rumble. Talk about it now. I do kind of think, I actually fancy having one. Just being like, let's plug it in. Samson, let's play the N64 for a bit.
Yeah, there's loads of great games.
Oh, 100%.
I think I have like maybe 5 games, if that. Unfortunately, Mario Kart isn't one of them.
Well, let me know what ones when they are. And if there's any others we fancy, I might pick up a couple.
Well, not the prices they're going for now, you won't.
Do you know what? That's true.
Next time you're down, though, we'll whiz out the N64. A couple of games on Lilac Wars. And that's it, because I refuse to play GoldenEye.
Just don't want it to ruin the experience. The memory of it.
Yeah. And I actually quite enjoyed this episode.
And I actually quite enjoyed this episode. I think it was a We have been the Retro Gamer Dads. We'll catch you next time.
Do a barrel roll.